Alright, hello and welcome back to my 2D Left 4 Dead in Unity tutorial. Today we are implementing weapons. So you'll see here we've got a pistol. I'll just shoot here, you'll see we shoot, fires projectiles and stuff like that. And likewise, if we take the Uzi that's on the floor that doesn't look like an Uzi, but whatever, we can also shoot. It'll fire 30 odd bullets, it'll reload, and then shoot again, and you get the picture. So yeah. Let's go see how we did all this then. Okay, so first off, we have a weapon class, which contains most of the information that we need for sort of like setting out a weapon. So first off, we've got 4 integers, magazine size, which is just the maximum capacity of a magazine or the weapon before it needs to be reloaded. Max ammo, which will be the max ammo that you can carry for any particular weapon. Current ammo is the current ammo you are carrying, and the current magazine is the current number of bullets in the magazine. Next up, we've got a projectile, which is a game object, which is just what the thing fires. So in this case, it's just normal bullets, but you can get like a grenade launcher or something like that, or maybe if you were doing different weapons, you could have the M60 or the sniper that fires a higher caliber of bullets that can penetrate multiple zombies. Just spitballing ideas there. I've got a bullet spawn point, which controls where it's from. Now, when we pick up a weapon, it will be sort of attached to the player's left or right hand. I can't tell my left from right, so I'm bad at it. But yeah, basically it gets attached to the respective hand, and we'll see that it actually has a position as a child here, which is where the bullet is spawned. And that matches up with the actual in-hand sprite, so if I find it here, that's not the right one. 4, 3, 2, there we go. So you'll see here that for the Uzi, the bullet spawn point is just at the end of the gun there. And I'll just have to reset that back to where it was. And then, likewise for that, we have 2 sprites. One for the gun being in someone's hand, the other for it being on the ground. Next up, we have a couple of floats. So we've got one for the fire rate, which will be defining like how often a fight you can fire a bullet. So for the Uzi, the fire rate is going to be much higher than, say, for a pistol or a shotgun. We've got a fire rate timer, which is basically when we fire a bullet, this float gets set to this value, and then it will count down to 0, and then that will basically say, all right, we can fire a bullet again. And likewise, we got a reload time, so the time it takes to reload. We don't have animations for it at the moment, but can probably do that if we do an episode focusing on animations. And likewise, we have a reload timer, which works in a similar manner, where it just takes the value of the reload time, counts that down to 0, and then sets the respective ammunition values, which is in a method below, which I'll go over. Next up, we have a gun animation value. This is basically just an integer for defining what animation we should play. So if I just open up the animator, if I click on Zoe, it'll check. We actually have another, for one, we have a parameter for gun value and has a bool for has gun in hand. So yeah. So what this does, and we're also on a separate layer, which can just be created by pressing that plus button here. And I encountered, I don't know if it's a bug or an intentional bit of Unity that I don't understand, but I had to increase the weight of this layer to actually get it to work. I'm not sure why, but I did, so you may have to as well. So yeah, so basically we have a little animation system that checks for what kind of gun we have. So in this case, we check gun state. So if we do have a gun in our hand, we go to this check gun state. And if we don't have a gun in our hand, we go to this empty hands animation. And likewise, from this check gun state, if the gun value is 1, like we have on the Uzi, so you'll see that the gun animation value is 1, that gets passed in and we'll play the hold Uzi animation. Whereas if we pass in 0 for the pistol, we play the holding pistol animation. Okay. And that loops around, and we could add more things. So, say if if reloading was true, we could play a reload animation for the Uzi and the pistol based on that same gun value. Okay. So next up, we then have 2 bools. One is just for defining whether the gun is reloading or not, and another one for deciding whether the gun should have infinite ammo, because in Left 4 Dead, the pistols, they have endless ammo, so you'd want that. Okay, so nothing in the start, so we can just get rid of that. On update, we know it's called once per frame, so we don't need that. It basically got the fire rate countdown. So if the fire rate timer is more than 0, it just counts it down. And if reloading is true, then it calls this reload method. So basically, if we check if the current ammo is less than or equal to 0, we just return, because you can't reload if you don't have any ammo. Otherwise, it reduces reload timer, which is by time.delta-time. And if this value is less than or equal to 0, we set reloading to be false, so we're not reloading anymore because we're done with the timer. And if current ammo is less than the magazine size, then we add all the ammo we can to the current magazine. And if we've not got infinite ammo, we set current ammo to 0. And likewise, for if current ammo is equal to or more than the magazine size, we just say current magazine is equal to magazine size, and if infinite ammo is false, then we set current ammo to be reduced by the magazine size. Yeah, we've also got a couple of other methods which are not called from our update function, but are called from the various other weapon scripts, so like the player weapon controller and that. So first off, we've got equip weapon, which will just equip the weapon to the player weapon controller that calls it. And I will go over that when it is actually called, because that'll make more sense. But for fire weapon, again, it's a fairly simple idea. If we are reloading, then we just call return. Else, if current magazine is more than 0 and fire rate timer is less than or equal to 0, then we basically instantiate a bullet as this transform. We set the bullet spawn point to be the bullet's position to be the bullet's spawn point dot position, and we set the parent to null. The reason we're doing this rather than just and then setting the parent to null rather than say instantiating it just directly at the bullet spawn position is that it makes sure it's the correct rotation, so we can just say, all right, go forwards, and the bullet will be facing the right way, rather than saying, all right, we have to do this rotation to make sure it's facing the mouse and whatnot. And it just makes the code look a bit simpler. So yeah. And then we decrement the current magazine and set fire rate timer to be equal to fire rate, so that counts down and make sure we can't instantiate all 30 bullets at once. And then if the current magazine is less than or equal to 0, then we set reloading to true, and reloading timer is equal to reload time, and then that starts calling the reload method. So next up, we have the player weapon controller. As you may have guessed, is attached to the player. So that. And what this does is basically controls all the weapon-based stuff that the player might need to do. So first off, we've got 3 actual instances of a weapon script. So the first off is current weapon. This will be like whatever you pick up in the world, so the Uzis, shotguns, and whatnot you will find in levels. We've got the pistol, which you start with and can't drop. And in hand is the current weapon that you will have equipped. So you use the scroll wheel to switch between like items and current weapons, and yeah, that's basically just to signify which weapon is currently in your hand. Okay, so next up we have an array of weapons called weapons, funnily enough. And this is basically just all the weapons in the world, so we can check for whether the player is near to them. And if they press E, then we will set that weapon that they were near to be the current weapon. And finally, we have a reference to the person animation controller called PA, and yeah, that's that. What was I going to do? Oh yes, just as a quick thing, we'll see on the right arm, I believe it is. Yeah, basically the right arm of the player has the pistol already set to it as a child, as part of the prefab. And yeah, that should be infinite ammo as well. And the reload timer of 1, because we weren't taking it from the prefabs. We can't have nested prefabs, but they are fixing that, so that's nice. So yeah, so basically, since the pistol is always carried by a player in Left 4 Dead, we've just got that as a child to the hand, and it can't be dropped by the player, so that'll always be there. And that is just dragged into the inspector here. Next up, so if for each weapon W in weapons, if the distance is less than 2 between the player and the weapon, and they press E, then we can call w.equip weapon, which equips the weapon to be the player's weapon. And we call this switch to main method, which switches the player to the main weapon from whatever item they might be holding. So in this case, it's only pistol that we can be holding otherwise, but in the future we'll have like med packs, pills, throwables, stuff like that. So yeah. So for the equip weapon method, so pass in the player weapon controller that wanted to equip the weapon. So first off, we just set equipping weapon .current, which is just the current weapon or the primary weapon that they have, which might be a better name, but whatever. Then we get the sprite renderer and we set the sprite to be in hand because that's what we're doing. Next, we are setting the sorting order of the weapon to be 5, so it appears above the hands. And next, we set the position and rotation of the weapon. So in this case, we are getting the person animation controller right hand transform position and right hand transform rotation, so it's facing the right way, as if the player is holding the weapon. It might have been actually better to just cache that first, but considering it's not like run every frame, I don't think it'll matter too much. And finally, we set the weapon's parent to be the right hand of the player picking it up. And finally, we call equipping, we get the player person animation controller again, and we call set weapon to true, and we pass in the gun animation value to this set weapon value method, which I will go over now. Basically what we're doing is calling animator.setBool has gun in hand to has gun, so in this case we're passing in true because we just picked up a weapon. And likewise for set weapon value, we're calling animator.setInteger gun val, and with the value passed in, so it'll be 1 for the Uzi, 0 for the pistol. Right. Also, for the animation, actually, I've just changed it quickly, so the animator is now on the parent object of the player. This is because I originally thought you could have like multiple animators on an object, but apparently you can't. So in this case, we had to switch to layers on the animator, and yeah, so that's why it just made more sense to, rather than just have that animator on the legs of the person, we just have it on the parent object of it, so we can animate everything. Okay. So from person weapon controller, so we've equipped the weapon and we've set all the animation values and whatnot. So now we can go on to switch domain. What this does is it just checks quickly if we have a current weapon. So if that is null, then we just return, so we don't want to do anything. Else we set in hand to be equal to the current weapon. We set this current weapon.gameObject to be active. And we call the person animator and set the weapon value to be whatever the current weapon was. And likewise, we set the pistol to be, we disable the pistol's game object basically just to hide it. And then we call pa.setWeaponTrue just to make sure that we are actually having the, what's the word? The words will come to me eventually. To make sure that the animator knows that we have a weapon in our hands. And likewise, we have an identical method for switching to the pistol, which is used in our input controller. But basically, it just does the same thing, but instead of setting the current weapon to be the one in the hand, it just set the pistol to be the one in the hand. And if current weapon is null, then we just set the current weapon to be inactive. And yeah, that's that. Next up, so if we do have a current weapon, we can basically just press E to drop it. So if current weapon is not equal to null, and if we press E, we just unequip weapon. So what this does is it checks for if we have a weapon, and if it's null, it returns. Otherwise, we set the current weapon is transformed to be null. We set the sprite to be current weapon on the ground. Sorry for the train. We set the sorting order to be 2, so it doesn't like appear to be floating over the player or whatever. Then we set the person animation controller to set weapon to false because we won't be carrying a weapon anymore. And as for weapons, we just refresh that to make sure we can find it in the world again so we can re-pick it up. And the current weapon is null because, like we said, we dropped it. We don't need it anymore. And we just call switch to pistol so that we still have a weapon draw. So I'll just download that. So likewise, if we pick up the gun here, switch to it, likewise we can drop it, and we've equipped the pistol again. Okay. So that's the player weapon controller done. Now onto the input script. Okay, so for the player input script, we've got two new methods. The first is switch item. Basically, we're calling input.mousescrolldelta.y. Input.mousescrolldelta basically is a vector2 that returns the whether you're scrolling the mouse or not. So scrolling your mouse wheel up will make it above 0 on the Y, and scrolling it down will make it -0. Based on that, we increment this new value called item index value, which is just an integer that's 0. And we also have a reference to the person weapon controller, which is PW, because we have weapons now. And what this does is we'll either increment it or reduce it. And likewise, we have a couple of checks here. So if the item index value is more than 4, then it gets returned back to 0. And likewise, if it's less than 0, it gets recycled down to 4. This is because we'll only need 5 items, I believe it is, for Left 4 Dead. So it's pistols, primary weapon, pills, throwable, first aid. Yeah, 5. So we'll only need like 5 item slots. And I know we only have the 2 weapons at the start, but the items will get added over the coming episodes, and we'll just keep it there. Might as well do that now rather than leave it till later. And likewise, so we have a couple of checks for what the item should be. So if item index value is 0, then we call the player weapon controller .switch to pistol. Otherwise, if item index value is 1, then we call, if current weapon is null, we don't do anything. Otherwise, we call switch to main. And that's how we switch between the 2 weapons at the moment. And for fire weapon, pardon me, basically we're just checking for a left mouse click. And if it is, we call fire current weapon. Simple. And our last script is even simpler. It's literally just a bullet. It's not got any collision detection at the moment, so we'll add that in later. But first off, we just got a vector3 for the start point, and when the bullet is created, we just call start point as this.transform.position. And then we call transform.translate vector3.up times 20 times time.delta-time. And we also call space.self. And remember how when we spawned it, it was a parent or child object, of the weapon. That basically makes sure it's a rotation, so we can just call vector3.up. And likewise, you have to make sure it's set to space.self rather than space.world, because if it's space.world, then the bullet will just transform up on the y-axis, or the global y-axis, rather than the local one to itself, based on its rotation. And then, just to make sure we don't have bullets just going off into the ether forever, we have a check saying if vector3.distance from the bullet's current position and the start position is more than 50, then we just destroy it, because we don't want to have them hanging around. And that's pretty much it for weapons. So, again, I'll just show you, so we can shoot the stuff, and then we'll stop, and then it'll start again, because we've got bullets and whatnot, and reloading, and then for the Uzi, we can pick up that, and just spray, spray again. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, if you enjoyed that or you have any questions, like, comment, subscribe, all that shit. I'm on Patreon, so help me fund my game dev dreams. It'll help me make better tutorials and help fund my other projects, which you'll get access to. I've got a new one in the works now, sort of. So that might be coming up towards the end of April. I'm aiming to have like a working prototype sort of built. I've commissioned some artists for it, so it'll look better and whatnot. And yeah, so enjoy. So cheers for watching, and goodbye.